Live on broadcasting to the nation. Good morning. Christ, that was nearly a bad start, wasn't it, from the start? Good morning, everybody. Dave Knight from Do 3 here to do our quick fire, or maybe not so quick fire swim analysis, because sometimes they're ending up a bit longer than they should do. The idea with this was to try and keep them to 5 minutes, but finding it very difficult to do that. But we'll still keep it short and snappy. So we're doing a swim analysis video on Mike today. Mike Abbott. Thank you. Mike Abbott today. So hopefully you're watching, Mike. Let's just see if anyone's watching. Yeah, got a few people watching. If you are watching and you've got any comments or questions along the way, if you just want to say hello, that's fine too. Just pop your comments in the description box, in the comments box, whether it be Facebook or YouTube, and it should find its way through to us. So it's always nice to know who's watching. Also, if this is going to be obviously recorded and we'll be sitting on Facebook and YouTube afterwards. So if you watch this when it's not live, then you can still put the comments in, and they should still find their way through to us, and we'll answer any questions you may have along the way. All right. So, without further ado, let's jump in and have a look at Mike. So, Mike is a chap who sent us in the swim video for us to have a look at. So, haven't seen Mike swim before in any great detail that I can remember. So, let's have a look and see what we've got. Okay, so drop onto the iPad and just going to scan through and see what we've got here. Okay. Okay, so obviously a nice underwater view, first of all, of Mike. Breathing to the right-hand side only. Kicking fairly strongly. Just going to scan through these videos and see what we've got, and then I'll come up with a summary as to what we're going to focus on. So this is the first time I've seen these videos in any detail. So obviously the same thing, swimming the other way, breathing away from the camera this time. Okay. Right, so there's quite a lot happening here. The last few video analysis sessions like that we've done have been quite similar actually. A lot of things happening on the front end of the stroke. So we've got a little bit more kind of differences that we can talk about on this particular one. So a nice head-on angle of Mike this time. We haven't got any recovery over the water shots that I can see. So we've only got underwater stuff that we can work from, but that's okay. Right. Good. Okay, so let's see what we've got. We've got a few more people watching. Good. So again, any of you guys that have just joined us a little bit later, if you've got any comments or questions, or if you feel free to comment on what you think Mike needs to work on. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think too. So just going back to the first clip, we're going to have a look at this again here. And I'm going to pause this in a second, and we'll start talking about what we've got. Okay. So first of all, there's a few things happening here, and sometimes with swim coaching and technique correction, it's deciding which are the best elements for us to work on, and in which order. Because very often swimming is a bit like a chain reaction. Something can happen one end of the stroke, and it can affect other elements of the stroke too. If that makes sense. One of the good example of this is so if you look at Mike's body position in the water here. So very generally, if you were to draw an average line through his body there, that's his general body position in the water. When ideally, you want to be sitting on the surface of the water. I've just drawn a line along the bottom of the lane ropes there, just to give you a horizontal line. So when we're talking about trying to improve swimmers, what we in simple terms, what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve the propulsion, the amount of propulsion that they generate, and also reduce drag. So if we do those two things, then obviously we're going to get a lot quicker. And sometimes the biggest kind of hurdle to them improving is their body position and therefore increased drag. Sometimes the hurdle is they're having great propulsion, but their body position is okay. All right, we've got a combination of both things happening with Mike here. So body position is a big one for Mike. We need to have a look really at why Mike's body is sitting a little bit lower in the water than it could be. And as with all swimmers we look at, one of the first things we look at is the head position and the breathing. So if we have a look at Mike's head position, he's obviously breathing here and he's lifting his head right out of the water. So his head is out of the water breathing, and I can tell from the angle that his head is actually going to be mostly out of the water at this point, because you can just see his neck here, and the rest of the head is going to be popping out of the water. Now, we generally recommend more of a kind of a head position when you breathe, where you keep one goggle in the water, one goggle out. And I'm going to do a really rubbish example drawing here and try and show you what I mean by this. So that's your head, and imagine you are. This is going to be slightly jokey here, but you're going to end up breathing like that. So that's your head turning to breathe, and what happens is the water comes up here, and it makes a little bow wave at the top of the head, and then drops down, and then comes back up. So that's what we want to be doing. So if you look at the bow wave on the front of a ship, what actually happens is the water comes up at the front as it hits the front of the ship, and then the water actually drops down below the surface level of the water and then comes back up. So you end up with this little trough. So ideally what we want to do is keep our head down nice and low, so this little swimmer's spine would be coming straight down here. Actually under the water, wouldn't it? But and it would create this bow wave at the front of the head, and then a little trough, and you actually breathe in that trough there, this trough here. Okay, so that allows you to keep the body nice and vertical in the water. All right, so it's really important that you do that. So head position is one thing. So what happens then is if you lift that head up, I can't really do this because obviously it's all fixed, but if that head was up here, it's going to get a bit of a mess this, but if that head was up there, what would happen is the spine would start to come down this way. So the body position would change. So it's like a seesaw effect almost. The body would kind of tip in the middle. Oops, that way. The body would tip in the middle. So we want to try and keep the head down as low as possible. All right, so Mike's head is quite high in the water, and it's causing his body position to drop down there. Now, the question now is, why is Mike feeling the need to lift his head so high? And very often, this is a consequence of holding the breath. Okay, so if we just fold this through, I haven't seen this in great detail, but I'd imagine this is what's happening. So I'm just going to wait. In fact, what I'm going to do here, actually, no, I will do it this way. Let's get back into here. Sorry, just forward it through. Okay, so Mike is breathing here. So he's breathing in. His head comes back in the water, and it's actually got a little bit of air coming out. But what will happen, no doubt, is when he turns to breathe here, we'll see a big amount of air coming out. You can just see it appearing here. So he's got some air coming out when his head's in the water. There's a little bit coming out. It looks like quite a lot there, but when he turns to breathe, there's a big exhalation of air there at that point. All right, so he is definitely holding his breath a little bit. And what happens then is it throws the timing of the stroke out. And actually, when he turns to breathe, he's actually having to do two things now. He's having to breathe out and in. And as a result of that, you're almost spending too long on your side. And because he's trying to get as much air in as possible, he's having to breathe out, he's feeling the need to actually lift his head quite high out of the water. So that's one of the reasons the head is going right up out of the water and the body position starts to drop. What also happens a little bit here is because he's spending so long breathing, is this lead arms just kind of sweeps away, starts to drop away from him down here and loses support. Okay, so it loses support, and then if you see the body here, it continues to kind of, I don't know if I've got a round arrow, I don't know if this is going to work, but the body starts to over-rotate, and then you lose traction, you start to slip through the water that way. All right, but the main thing really for Mike, without trying to overcomplicate this, try and keep it a little bit more simple, is Mike, you've got to really focus on breathing out in the water. So you turn to breathe in, and then as soon as the head goes back in the water, you're making sure you get all that air back out into the water. All right, so again, when you turn to breathe again, your lungs are already empty, and you can take another breath of air in. Okay, so hopefully that point is fairly clear. We'll go through how you can improve that shortly. So another thing that happens when you hold your breath is this chest is full of air. Okay, so again, air floats and it's going to make the chest come up a little bit. And if the chest comes up, again, we're back to our seesaw, it's going to make the legs drop. So there's something else there which is making the legs drop. So it's the same thing, same fix, just making sure you're fully exhaling. In fact, actually, I think what I'll do while I'm here, before I forget, is I'm just going to go through. If I show you, I'm going to show you a drill for all files. We're going to show you the sink down drill. If I can find it, here we go. Sink downs. So this is a drill that you can do in the deep end of the pool, and you simply tread water, and then stop treading water, and just exhale. And what should happen is you should sink. You should sink to the bottom. Okay. If you keep an air in your lungs, this chap is finding it a little bit more difficult on the end here. You won't go down quite so easily. Some people find this more easy than others. These girls are finding it really easy. They're just sinking straight down to the bottom. But a constant steady stream of bubbles. And that's what you should be doing when you breathe out under the water. So you're not breathing out in a big explosive exhalation of air. It's a constant steady stream of bubbles like that to get all the air out of the lungs. And that'll help you get the chest down. And when you turn to breathe, it'll help you just get the air in, not have to worry about breathing out so much. Okay, so that's that. Let's go back to something else which is happening here. Now, again, I'm talking about the big wins here for Mike. So breathing and head position is one, predominantly the breathing. Something else which is happening here, which is not helping Mike's body position, is his kick. So Mike is kicking, he's kicking fairly well. So he's got a decent rhythm to his kick there. He is kicking a little bit from the knee. So if we look at the legs here, I'm just going to draw something. So that we want to be ideally keeping the legs as straight as possible, really, when you're kicking. Maybe a little bit of a flex in the knee, but certainly if you can see that leg at the back there, it's got a big kick in it. It's got a big angle at the knee there. But the most important thing, or one of the other things I'm concerned about here, is the feet. Okay, so he's got, looks like runner's feet to me. Okay, so if you look at the angle when he kicks, look what happens to that left foot. So this here is effectively putting the brakes on. Every single time Mike kicks, he's putting the brakes on. That is just, we do a drill sometimes in the squad where we get people to intentionally kick down with their foot in that kind of position to show what difference it makes. You literally start to go nowhere. If you start to kick down intentionally like that, it's putting the brakes on. So he's pulling with one end and kind of pushing back with the other end. So really got to work on pointing the toes. This is just like a big parachute here. This is just going to be causing you, imagine there's a big parachute on the end there. That's what's happening. It's pulling you back from the back end of the stroke, and that's going to make your legs sink. All right, so it's something else which is making the legs sink there. All right, so what do we need to do? Well, first of all, it looks like when Mike kicks down, look at that on the same side, he actually does have a reasonable amount of flexibility in his ankles. You can see that because when he kicks down, the toes are pointed. So it's not that he can't point his toes, it's just that he's not kind of physically focusing in on doing it when he's swimming. He has the flexibility to physically be able to point his toes. It's just not happening while he's swimming along because he's not thinking about it. So all you need to do really is point the toes and just really focus, do quite a lot of swimming where you're just focusing on pointing those toes. And actually, in terms of the overall kick itself, we need to be making sure that you're kicking from the hip. Kicking from the hip up here. Okay, so kicking from the hip, not from the knee. And a good way of doing that is, it sounds a bit strange, but almost as though you're kind of squeezing your bum cheeks together. If you squeeze your bum cheeks and clench them nice and tight, and it'll pull the legs together, and you'll be kicking with a straighter leg straight away. All right, so just kind of try that. Squeeze the bum cheeks together as though you're trying to keep a credit card in there or something, someone else's credit card. Kick the legs together, really point the toes, and that will make the legs go much straighter. All right, so those two things are certainly going to help the kick. Just to kind of finish off the kick side of things, I'm just going to go back on the camera here. just to finish off the kick side of things. Here we go. Good thing to do is to practice in the deep end. You can actually tread water using just your kick. So imagine you are kind of, well, like similar to sink downs actually. So arms by your side, and actually try and stay as above water by just kicking. What you'll find is that you'll soon find what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so just kind of let go, give it a little bit of a go, and keep a little bit of a kick, and see what happens to your body position. If you're not happy, then clearly you can hang on to the side, or if you can keep going a little bit longer, then keep going a little bit longer. But you'll find what happens when you point your toes and you don't point your toes. So experiment with it. So just vertical in the water. Then what you can do is you can push off from the deep end, head down, nice and flat on the water, one arm on top of the other, and just do the same kick that was keeping your head above water when you were vertical. Do the same kick, nice, good, strong kick, and then swim it out to the end as you go. All right, and try and maintain that kick as you go, but really focus on pointing the toes, kicking from the hips. I think I'm going to leave it there because there's enough there for Mike to get stuck into. There for future kind of development, Mike certainly be looking at the front end of the stroke in terms of the quality of the catch. But for now, we need to start getting the drag reduced a little bit by getting the body flat in the water, sort the breathing out, sort the kick out a little bit, make it nice and straight and pointy. And then the next stage, once you've kind of got used to that, then we can look at improving other things. So maybe get back in contact when you've spent a bit of time on that. In terms of just kind of training to help yourself develop that, do lots of short drills. So don't swim miles and miles and miles, and do long intervals, short intervals, 25s, 50s, really focusing on the technique. Lots of rest, really focus on what you're doing, and just do that as often as you can until it starts to become a little bit more natural, a little bit easier. Then you can start to increase the distance. If you do too much distance, then you'll do a couple of lengths quite nicely, and then you'll start getting sloppy after that because you'll get tired. You'll start to lose focus. So that's the best way to go about doing that. I think that's we're going to leave it there for now. I hope you found that useful. As the links in the description, if you want to click the link in the description, to send in another video to us, any of you guys that are watching, we'll have a look at that at some point in the future. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.